So at this stage, I'm just going to try and refine some of the muscle forms here and fill in some of the transitions between them. It's kind of sort of creating a delicate balance between making it feel like he's an emaciated figure, but also making it feel like there's skin stretched over these muscles. If I were to do something like that, it's not going to feel very realistic. It won't feel like there's flesh stretched across bone here, or stretched across bone and muscle. If I take my clay brush or clay tubes brush, for example, and go to the brush menu, and under depth, if I set the embed to 0, this is an interesting effect because what it's going to do is it's going to add into the recessed areas first, as you can see here. See how that brush adds into all those recessed areas? It's almost like it's adding from behind. That's really nice for filling in and creating a fleshy, tension on the surface. So it's one of the trickier parts and one of the more important parts, I think, to trying to get things to look cool is to make them look like they are, you know, skin, as opposed to just, a bunch of anatomy sculpted on. Really, pretty soon I'm going to need to turn off symmetry. I want to break the symmetry when I get this guy to, a good point of finish. I want to go in and make sure I add some asymmetrical aspects to him. Because right now, especially through the abs here, or through the abdomen, it's real apparent that symmetry is on here. So I just want to be careful of things like that. I'm going to go to the brush menu here. At the bottom, I'm going to click Reset All Brushes, because my standard brush was feeling a little strange there. It wasn't behaving quite like I expected it to. There we go. That reset all of my brushes. Now hopefully that brush will feel much better, and it does. It feels a lot more like I expect it to. What had happened was at some point I just changed some settings while I was working with the brush, and instead of trying to hunt down what those settings might have been, because I've been sculpting in here for hours, I just reset all my brushes and I'm back to square one. Using the clay tubes brush here to just stroke along those ribs in the opposite direction. And it helps create the sense of there being strips of skin stretching across those forms. And just picking out bits of shadow through there. And it's well to the point that we could go ahead and subdivide again. As a matter of fact, once I finish suggesting or accentuating the forms of these ribs, I'm going to go ahead and actually add a subdivision level. I don't want this guy to become too rotten and cadaverous here, so I am going to scale back from what I'm doing here, because this really does start to feel like it's a zombie's rib cage rather than a person. And I do want there to be a certain flesh and blood aspect to this guy. I'm going to use my smooth brush, dial back my Z intensity, and I'm just going to smooth this a bit. We'll step down a subdivision level and take that smooth brush down really low, and then smooth from the lower subdivision level. And this has a really nice effect when we step back up, because what happens is ZBrush tries to smooth but also reintroduce the subdivision or reintroduce the detail that's in the higher subdivision level. So it tends to create a nice muted version of what we had sculpted before. And then I can just take my smooth brush back to it like this. I'm going to deepen that armpit again. Go in with my clay tubes brush. The serratus on somebody this skinny is not going to be that pronounced, but I want to suggest some change in rhythm there. Okay. I'm going to reveal all again. Remember, this guy does have legs on there, but I'm not really sculpting on those legs. And I will Control D to add another subdivision level. You can see that smooths everything down a bit. I'll go ahead and hide those legs. Actually, I don't want to hide the legs like that. I want to maintain some of that. So I'm going to hide the legs like this from down here. There we go. So let's save our work. When I'm working, I like to stroke the muscle in the direction that it would flow. I just find it helps tie forms together to do that. You can see back here, I've gotten the muscles here at the base of the spine have come out way too far. So I'm going to go into the move brush here and try and tuck the base of the spine or the base of his body back in a little bit. And that's going to accentuate the curvature, that extreme curvature of his spine. There we go. Remember those ribs that are showing through the back there. It's always really disturbing when someone is that thin, when you start to see ribs from the back. And just as an experiment, I'm going to see what it looks like if I raise his ribs up like that. That's quite creepy. Might split the difference with that and just bring them up a little bit. It's almost becoming an avian kind of bird cage if I were to, or a rib cage, if I were to narrow it even more. But I don't think I'm going to do that. I like having the mass in the ribs there. I'm going to step back up to my higher subdivision level and go in with the clay tubes brush and then fan this pectoralis muscle out. And I'm just going to play around with the lights here really quick. Go to the light menu and let's shift this light up above. Give us some nice dramatic lighting from above and see what that looks like. I need to fill in this transition here. Don't want it to seem like his ribs are sitting on top of his skin. So I need to have the skin stretching across them back down into the abdominals here. At this stage, I've sped up the video considerably because we're really just going through and refining the way the forms interrelate to each other. The shapes are already there. At this stage, I'm just catching shadow and then stroking across things using the clay tubes brush just to give a sense of there being skin draped over them, like this buckle of skin at the elbow here. So this is really about treating the surface now. You see, much of this is about me creating striations of skin or stretched pieces of skin, like you see here between the shoulder and the chest. There's a lot of use of the clay tubes brush here because the clay tubes brush is really well suited for this type of work because it adds into the recessed areas first. It has a tendency to fill out crevices and really makes, if you're stroking quickly between two raised forms, it makes a very convincing bit of stretched skin between them. That's a good shot of the forearm there. You can see where I'm stroking along the extensor muscles. And that would be extensor digitorum there, that big V-shaped muscle. If I'm not mistaken, yeah, there should be extensor digitorum. There's so many beautiful things going on in the forearm. I love that part of the body. Here, just catching shadow in between the striations of the pectoralis muscle. I'm just working the base of the skull here using the clay tubes brush to mass out that form. And then bring the muscles of the neck down. Going to skip ahead a little bit here in a moment. It's really a long process of me working my way around and doing just what you see here, sort of massaging the surface into shape. Just trying to really get a sense of there being skin stretched over all this. Which is, you keep hearing me say that, it's just hugely important, is to get that sense of skin, because you can have the anatomy, but you really want it to feel like there's skin on top of it unless you're sculpting an écorché. And that's the fun part, I think, and the challenge, is how to describe form like that. And working the clavicle here. I'm really excited by some of the shapes that are happening. It's very convincing bits of stretchy skin, I think, in the shoulder area that I'm happy with right now. Right now, by the time you're watching this video, I won't like it anymore. I want to do another one. I want to fix it. This is probably a good time to mention it. If you've never liked anything you've done, don't worry about it. Most people don't. Most artists I know don't ever like anything they've done. They like it for about a day or two, and then all they can see are the mistakes. That's what makes it so wonderful. That's why I really feel like the process of learning is what's so beautiful and so important. Because if you stop learning, you might as well stop being an artist. It's just, in my opinion, unless you are, a consummate master. It's the process of getting there is what's so exciting, and that comes with appreciating and loving your work, and loving the process, but also being able to recognize your shortcomings, being able to see where a piece misses the mark, because that's what you aim for in the next piece. If you don't see the mistakes, if you don't see the shortcomings in your work, you won't know what to aim for in the next piece of work that you do. That would be bad. So I wish somebody had told me that, real early on. If any of you that are watching this are like, just starting your exploration of art, something I really wish somebody told me early on is two things. First thing is, everything you do looks terrible until it's done. Don't give up on it just because it's looking bad. Even like the top-notch professional best artists out there say that there's this long period of time when you're working on something where it's just not working and it looks bad, and you just need to keep working at it, and it comes together. And then the second thing is that everyone to some extent is unsatisfied with the last thing that they did, and they always want to do better. So putting veins in here, don't underestimate the power of veins. They really can help make it look like it's skin. There's just something about when you draw a vein across two muscles, it really does suddenly say, oh, there's skin and tissue on top of these muscles. And, it's just fun doing veins. Get yourself a vein map and have fun. Sketch them where they are. So at this stage, we're ready to start posing the figure. There's further sculpting that I can do, but I would like to do that once I've got him in a pose. See, we've really resolved a lot of the primary and secondary forms, and even come down to some tertiary wrinkles and some striations in the skin and the muscle here. Got the masses of the pelvis and the torso and the head in a nice rhythm here. See the zigzag that we've got. I'm enjoying this offsetting rhythm, and I like this very arched, attenuated posture that he's in. So now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and get him into a pose that's dynamic for our composition. To do that, we're going to use a ZBrush plugin called Transpose Master, which is located here under the Z plugin menu. Transpose Master is a free download from pixelogic.com. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and tear off the Z plugin menu to the side of the screen here. And we'll take a look at Transpose Master. You've got these several buttons here. There's T-Pose Mesh. And what T-Pose Mesh will do is it'll take all of your subtools, step them down to their lowest subdivision level, and then combine them into a single Z tool that you can then pose. Once that's posed, you'll press T-Pose to Sub-T, and it'll take that posed mesh and then transfer the new position for each subtool back into your original model, which has the separate subtools that are not combined. There's Z-Sphere Rig. This means you can actually use a Z-Sphere Rig to pose your model. Groups will preserve the existing polygroups when you go into T-Pose. So for example, if I want to keep the groups that I've got here because I find them very useful for isolating parts of the figure, if I turn this on, it'll maintain those in my T-Pose mesh, the one that's combined. Layer is really nice. What this does is it creates a new layer for each subtool that contains the pose position. So if I want to go back to my unposed model, I can easily just turn off that pose layer for each subtool. That's a really cool thing to have enabled. Now lastly, we've got Save Transpose Master Project, and this is very useful because it will save everything. It'll save my Transpose Master model, it'll save my original Z-tool in a single file. That way I can load it back later and continue posing, so I don't have to finish my pose in one sitting. So let's go ahead and step down to our lowest subdivision level on the body. And the reason for this is I want to show you something here. I just want to make sure that we're at the lowest subdivision level, that it's going to be something that I can work with. For example, if this were a one step down, let's see if I can actually reconstruct subdiv here. There we go. Something like that. If that was my lowest subdivision level, I might find that to be just too low res to effectively pose. I might prefer something that's a little bit denser, like that. In which case, I'll just step up to level 2 and click delete lower, and it'll delete the lower subdivision level. So this is going to be the sub-D level that Transpose Master is going to use. Now also, you'll notice that I've made the legs visible. We haven't been working with the legs because I just don't want to sculpt on them. I'm not going to use them as part of our composition, and I just didn't want to waste time working on the legs when I really was going to focus in on the top of the character. But I didn't want to delete the legs because I might want to come back and finish them later. So by making the legs visible, we'll be able to use Transpose Master. It's very, very important that you not have anything hidden on the model when you press T-Pose Mesh. This needs to be fully visible, and that's true for all of your subtools. You can't have anything hidden. If you do, it'll cause an error when it comes back, and it won't be able to transfer the pose in many cases. So let's go ahead now and click T-Pose Mesh. I'm going to turn off groups. I'm not too concerned with keeping my polygroups, but I do want to keep layers turned on. You see it steps through all of those subtools and then creates a T-Pose mesh. The T-Pose mesh has one subtool, and it's everything combined. There's the eyes, the teeth, and the body, and it's all in one tool. Now I can save my Transpose Master project by clicking this button here, and I'll just save it as posing. There we go. Transpose Master project has been saved. There we go. So we're ready now to actually do some posing.